Well, hi there. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Raleigh, and welcome to Preparing You for Winter Part 2. This is kind of a real low, kind of relaxed approach to finding out exactly what you might want to know about our forecast. Thanks very much. If you're watching us now on WCPO.com, you're looking at a live shot downtown. We've got some rain around the area. We're going to continue with that. Temperatures are running from 57 in Wilmington to 48 degrees out in Hebron right now. To my left, Libby Cunningham, our social media specialist, is here. We've already gotten some questions that you've wanted answered, and we're going to try and answer everything we can here in about the next 30 minutes. And sitting off in our wings, so to speak, Eric Donahue from People Working Cooperatively. You know PWC as being one of the great organizations around. Well, wave. They want to know you're live. Thank you, Eric. Okay, great. Yeah, he had a great sense of humor while we were off camera. Let's see if he continues. He actually does Holiday Inns around the tri-state, so it's possible you really get more for your money here. He's going to be doing a little shtick. So as we go through the next 30 minutes, you'll bring us some questions. We'll do the best we can of answering them. And what I thought I would do is we'll just start right off with questions, and we'll go over to Libby for the first one. What do you got?
Okay, Steve. So Amy Dunphy has asked us 3 questions for you.
Oh, okay.
We shared a graphic on our Facebook page that showed the different temperatures.
Yeah.
And she was wondering how cold the dark blue was on the map, the one that's kind of around Cincinnati.
Sure. Okay, that's easy enough. Let me do this, and we'll be kind of doing this live, so it'll take me a second every once in a while to bring all of this to you, because I'll set up maps that are appropriate, and you can see it going on behind me, I think. But let me do it right there, and you can. All right, and there you go. So as you look at that dark blue shading, we're sitting in kind of that green shade. It's 45 degrees now, 34 in Chicago, 22 in Minneapolis. So that dark blue that you asked about actually is temperatures in the 20s. And so we're looking at 20s and 30s that are going to be coming down here for the overnight. So that's that easy. Yeah.
So the big question we're getting from Amy and a lot of other users is how much snow can we expect, if any?
Okay. All right. Well, did they mean on the immediate or kind of for the season, or both?
I think right now she just means immediately for the Arctic blast.
Fair enough. Okay, that's a good question. As we look at it, actually, the interesting thing here, and I got to make a quick little addendum and take this off again, take off these temperatures, so I can take the blue off here, and then open that up, and then you can see the graphic behind me. So as you see the graphic behind me, I'm going to push this ahead a little bit. Watch, grab the mouse in the timer, and as we keep going, watch here in the middle of the nation. All of a sudden, and there we go. And I don't have the clock on. There's the clock. And here's 4 a.m. on Thursday. And you'll see there's a little white shading there. I think as soon as Thursday, we could be seeing some flurries or even a snow shower passing through the area. There's a combination of a little moisture to the south and then also this little trough that's going to be the trigger to likely go ahead and bring us a few flurries. There's a larger issue at play here, though, and that's going to be this. We're going to see a big moisture tap by Sunday. And right now, Libby, to answer everybody else's question, it looks like by Sunday morning, and this is the inside weather that I'm not talking about just yet. Now for 2 days, I've seen around about a ½ an inch. Okay. Does that mean we're going to get a ½ an inch? We're still a couple of days away. Everything has to still fall in place. But I would say a ½ an inch on the ground by Sunday morning.
Okay, and how long can we expect it to stay cold like this?
That's a problem, because usually these outbreaks last 2 or 3 or 4 days. Sure. And so consequently, for you folks, this is what I think makes this a little bit different. It's not, unprecedented. We've had this before. But I think it's going to last for like a couple of weeks. In fact, I've got to show you something. Let me go on my Facebook page here. I pulled this up for the occasion. I think I've got it on my Facebook page. Let's see here. Hold on a second. And there it is. On my Facebook page, if you want more about that issue, really fine meteorologist at the National Weather Service, Seth Benow, wrote a nice little documentation, and the bottom line to what he said is this is unusual to have this happen. I think he said the last time it happened was like 2007 to last for this extended period. So it's been a while, not quite a decade, but it's been a while, so it's unusual to happen.
Okay, and from Sarah Root, the question I think a lot of the kids are wondering do you think we're going to see any type of snow or cold that would cancel or delay school?
You know, the only thing that could happen is, and there was a model run yesterday that I saw that actually pushed the snow like later Sunday into Monday. So if we were to get that, then the answer would be it's a possibility for Monday morning. But right now, what I'm seeing is generally we're looking for Sunday. So something's going to have to change to make that happen, so it doesn't look like it right now.
Okay. Facebook user Rayonda wants to know, do you think this winter is going to be worse or about the same as last winter?
That's interesting. Okay, I got that queued up too. I can go over here and we've got the winter outlook. We actually had this part of our special that we had just the other night. So if you watch the screen, guys, let's go to here so we can see it well. And if you can bring it actually full screen, guys, that would be even better. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so here's our winter outlook. And as you look at it, you'll notice how the West Coast really getting warmer than average. This is the Climate Prediction Center's assessment of the 90 days, December, January, and February. So you'll see that the real warm air is going to be along the West Coast. And along the south, you'll see how that area from El Paso, Dallas, and over to Atlanta is going to be colder than average. Now, we don't have any shading in over the top of us or the middle of the nation because there's no significant tilt one way or the other with temperatures. So that would mean we would have an average temperature winter or 90-day forecast, and that would look like this. So we're looking at temperatures in the 40s to upper 30s, or maybe some 20s, middle 20s there for the morning hours. So if you look at, you know what's funny is you bring this up and you go, oh yeah, well that's our 7-day forecast maybe here as we go forward in the next couple of days, because it's going to be colder than that actually. Okay, so one other note now. Okay, guys, let me show you this here as we go back full. Here's the snow averages for December, January, and February. So 6.5 inches or about 5. So that would be an average winter for us for precipitation. However, here's the interesting thing. The Climate Prediction Center has us in one of only 2 places in the nation that they say could be on average drier than average, whereas anywhere from Los Angeles, Dallas, Atlanta, New York would be wetter than average. Guys, come back here just for a second, and this is mostly why. The idea is there's an El Nino brewing out in the Pacific, and there's a thing called a polar jet, and that polar jet usually increases here to the south. So in other words, it's going to be bringing all the moisture that's out here from, let's say, an area low pressure and just sweeping it down across the southern part of the nation. So that's most likely the cause. Okay, Libby, what's next?
Matthew actually just tweeted us and wanted to know about the wind chills that we can expect, if there will be any.
Yeah, no, there will be. Winds are going to be a factor only from the standpoint that when it's in the morning, you know, we're looking at maybe anywhere from about 18 to 22 in the morning on a couple of mornings. And so even a light wind is going to make it feel like single digits. So yeah, it's going to be really cold.
Oh, man.
Most likely, let's see, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning right now.
Okay.
Okay.
And so last year, we kept hearing the term polar vortex. Now, this isn't the same as a polar vortex, is it?
No, it is. It's completely different. I should say, no, it isn't. It's completely different. Let me go ahead and just take a couple of things off of here, and I'll give you an idea of what polar vortex is and what we are not feeling. Okay, bring this map out really wide. It takes a second here, and maybe a little bit more. There we go. And we pop it over here. Okay, so if we look at this, here's the story. Polar vortex. As we look at it, let me get the proper coloration here so I can stay on my standards. And you got blue and red. Good. Okay. So we have an area of low pressure that sits up, and I don't quite have it up high enough, but it sits up there, and think about it in a three-dimensional fashion. So it's sitting over the globe, and it's actually in the atmosphere, and there's a rotation with it. That's the polar vortex, and for the most part, it keeps the coldest air in the world intact. Obviously, it's the Arctic, right? So what happened here in the last few days is we had an area of low pressure which used to be a tropical storm called Nuri, and it came in out and it just got caught up in and it started to move this way. Then it essentially nudged up in here. So it helped, and it was one of the factors now, and it helped trap some of that cold air across the region and funnel it through Canada and down across the country. So it essentially went up, nudged this cold air, and dropped it to the south. It is not the polar vortex that's over the top of us. The polar vortex, for all intents and purposes, doesn't move. It stays over the Arctic. But that cold air is associated with it. So if you say this cold air is associated with the polar vortex, that would be right. If you say this is the polar vortex, that would be incorrect.
Okay, good, because I feel like people might get confused.
Yeah, I think so. It's been, you know, the thing was, I think it was, what was it, last January?
Last January, yes.
Is that what it was? Yeah. Last January when everybody went nuts. And the problem is, and the reality was, it was the media that just went crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And then everybody hung onto that term, and it's the polar vortex, and it was like Chicken Little news.
Absolutely.
The sky is falling, and nobody really understood the terminology.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, what's next?
Matthew actually asked us another question since
Okay.
we answered his last one, and this is probably pretty important. Can we expect ice?
Not likely. Not
Okay.
likely. We're going to have enough cold air throughout the atmosphere, and without getting too technical, but because I don't have the proper graphics to show it really well, but if you think about it, it's going to be cold air over the ground. Let me do this. No, I can't turn it over there. There's going to be cold air up in the atmosphere here, and there's going to be cold air on the surface here, and there's going to be cold air in the middle. So anything that drops out of the clouds, let's say, is all going to be in the form of snow, right?
Okay.
So we're not going to have any layers of warm air. If we had a layer of warm air coming, and that would be the case, where we have the cold air here at the surface, and then we had warmer air here, then when we had the colder air or the snow falling from down here, it would melt. And then it would depend on how this warmer air or how thick it is, and it depends on whether that's going to turn out to be ice, sleet, or anything else. So it's the wedges, the 1, 2, 3 wedges of air that contributes to what kind of precipitation we get. And in this case, we're going to be cold from top to bottom, so anything we see will be snow.
So should we be worried about the roads, or should people just remain cautious when they're driving,
Yeah, I don't
as
think
always?
we're gonna, honestly, right now, I wouldn't see any issues. The time that we'll have to be concerned is as we get into maybe Thursday if we see any swirling snow
Sure.
showers. But right now, that is really just a chance more than anything else. And then more on Sunday is a possibility, as I said at the top of the show, of maybe getting
Sure.
possibly a half an inch. And then, maybe you just got to be careful.
So looking into the future, too, a couple of our Facebook fans want to know if you have any idea what the weather on Thanksgiving might be like.
Well, the reality is here we are sitting on let me look at my phone here. We're at the 11th.
The 11th.
Yeah, so we're talking about the
It's a while
20th.
away.
Yeah, let me put it this way. By all intents and purposes, I don't see a break from the cold air right now. So I can tell you that I've looked at model runs out to about 10 to 14 days. And by all accounts, it looks like it's going to stay cold around here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we're not sure about precipitation?
Too far out to make that
Too far out to
judgment.
make that
Yeah,
judgment?
the overall is that it's going to be probably still cold, but I wouldn't venture a guess on precipitation yet.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I think that we just need to remind people we're happy to answer your questions.
Good.
Please tweet at WCPO or write on our Facebook page.
Good.
We have it pinned at the top of our page, facebook.com/WCPO9. And Steve's giving us some pretty good information
Sure. Yep,
about
you
the
bet.
Arctic blast.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that we wanted to do too is also let me bring in Eric Donahue. Eric, come on over and let's grab your chair here so you can hop up in here for us. And Eric is from People Working Cooperatively. Now, for folks at home, so they understand what People Working Cooperatively is. It is a wonderful organization, and I happen to serve on the board not too long ago to help folks in need get their home right, for lack of a better term, for good folks like Eric who come in and make an assessment, help them with what could ever be maybe a ramp because somewhere something happened that they now need a ramp for their home. They may need an extended tub, they may need other features, or just for folks who need a little helping hand at the time of the year. So PWC, a great cause. Now, with that said, I think we queued up, let me see here, I think I got a couple of things queued up here in the graphics, and as we look at it, let me go forward. Here is what you need to know, so that's perfect. So, all right, Eric, let's talk about some of the things that folks can do to get their home ready with this big cold snap coming.
Well, one of the first things that comes to mind, I know when the temperature takes a drop, is you want to make sure that that furnace is up and running. So one thing to do right off the bat is check those furnace filters. Make sure those guys are clean. It doesn't restrict the airflow, and lets the air get to the areas of the home that you want it to.
Yeah, okay.
And keep you guys safe and warm. Also, with that, you want to make sure your registers are not blocked. A lot of folks will have some furniture, maybe a couch over a cold air return, or even a supply. You want to make sure that those are clear and they allow that air to circulate through the home.
Yeah, I think that's, while it sounds elementary, I did it myself just last week. I didn't realize we had shoved a chair over the top of one of them, so I know what you mean. Now, I guess a big factor is really surveying your home as you go forward, right?
Absolutely. You want to make sure that your outer shell of your home, your exterior walls are free of penetrations, whether it be from utilities such as electrical wires or plumbing wires, or even some of your furnace pipes and that. You want to make sure that there's no open air holes so that the heated air that you're paying that hard-earned money for isn't escaping from the home.
Okay, good enough. And speaking of that, to maybe save a little energy, we were talking about maybe checking your door frames, windows, things like that. What can you do along those lines?
Well, if you first of all, make sure check your home, look for window sashes that may be not locked down tight, may allow some of that air to escape.
Okay.
Around the doors as well, make sure they're shut nice and true. And you can also, in areas where you might find some small gaps, you can apply some caulk, maybe some foam weather stripping, things like that.
Okay, very good. Now, insulation's a big deal, right? I mean, we talk about that a lot, and you really emphasize that.
Yeah, absolutely. Along with the air loss, you want to make sure you have like a thermal boundary in place as well.
Okay.
So you look for insulation levels and make sure that you have some existing. I correlate it with walking out into the cold yourself. You don't want to. What good does it do to have a toboggan hat on when you don't have a jacket on? So you want to make sure.
I'm just guessing a hat is important. And listen, I'm going there too. So I'm guessing for you it's an important factor. So you know this well. Is that right?
I do. I usually can tell when it's raining and snowing. So yeah, to go back to that, you want to make sure that you have ample insulation in your walls. You want to make sure you have insulation in your attic as well.
Okay, very good. Now, one of the things that I was curious of is some of the folks may know, in fact, we've got the tips there, and the last one you'll see spray foam. And you and I were talking about that, in fact, and I didn't know about it. I wonder if everybody who's watching does. And what is that and how can it help you?
Well, there are a few different kinds of spray foam that can be applied in a weatherization type environment to help the air seal and insulate your home. The most common you can find at just about any hardware store is the small cans of foam. It's a one-part foam, and that's typical for small cracks and gaps around your perimeter of your home. You want to apply those to help stop some of that air leakage as well. And then there are larger applications that you can use on basement walls, foundation walls, things like that. You want to seek out professional help for that. So if you're low income, you're elderly, you're disabled, you think you might qualify for a weatherization program, call PwC.
Yeah.
We'll send out one of our trained professionals to do an assessment and audit on your home and help you save some energy.
You were nice enough to come in for tonight on your own time to help us out, to help the folks who are watching. So let's get in a quick plug for the nonprofit PwC, and that is some folks may very well qualify for that. They may be watching tonight, and again,
Absolutely.
That's what PwC does, right?
That's correct. Yeah, we look for folks who are income qualified. We have a number of different programs, a number of different weatherization programs, and we're looking for folks across the tri-state to catch up with us and see if you do qualify, and we'll come out and do what we do. We're looking for folks in Northern Kentucky right now for our Duke Energy program, and then we have the Hamilton County program through the state as well. So
that's terrific. Okay, very good. Well, Eric, thanks very much. I appreciate all the tips, and perhaps that has spurred some other interest as to what you might want to ask, whether Eric is here or myself or what you may have on the docket. Some of the things that I think that are important as we go forward, and Libby, I'll get back just in for a second. As we look at it, we've got ourselves this kind of long-form cold air. Is it the end of the world? No, of course not. I mean, it's going to be something we've all experienced on a number of occasions. Bottom line, though, is that the preparation involved, or just knowing in advance how cold, so it doesn't impact your plans. I think that's why we're even taking the time tonight, so you can get a better time frame. And in a moment, I'm going to give you that time frame with maybe a 7-day outlook as well, so you can really plan what's going forward. Libby, how about some more questions?
They're rolling in. Here's kind of a fun one from JD. He says that old farmer Lore says the date of the first significant snow is how many snows you will get that winter. So Sunday's the 16th. Does that mean we will get 16 significant snowfalls?
That's great.
Is there any truth to that? I think that's kind of fun.
I think that's a great question.
Thanks, JD.
Yeah, that's an excellent one. Thanks. That's a good one.
Laughing.
That's a lot of fun. I have to say, Libby, and here's the thing. That one I think probably falls into the Farmer's Almanac kind of category, which I enjoy, and I think so many others do too. One of the things that are important, though, is we should separate sometimes the fun, the kind of less scientific facts from anything else. And I say that because while the Farmer's Almanac is always a lot of fun to read, and in fact, I've picked it up on many occasions. There's no real science as far as anyone knows because they won't divulge how they come out with their forecasts.
Of course.
Now, scientists have asked them, you know, if you'll show us the way you do this and we can vet it scientifically, we'd be happy to know because you're putting out there some interesting information, perhaps like the 16 snowfalls or anything else.
Secret
and
recipe.
they've never wanted to, secret recipe, thank you.
Secret
yeah,
recipe.
they've never wanted to do that. And all seriousness or fun about it is I often call the Farmer's Almanac the horoscopes of weather. There are a lot. It's a lot of fun to read,
but
I wouldn't exactly, you know, put a whole lot of stock in it.
Sure.
Okay.
And here's another kind of fun question from Michelle. How reasonably far out are model forecasts and how reliable they are today versus even 5 or 10 years ago? How much has that changed?
What a great question. That really is.
Thanks,
That's something, that's really something to chew on. And that's, you know, I often enjoy this most because we don't get a chance to answer questions like that or give great information like Eric has here. Things have improved immensely. As recently as the last 10 years, we are now looking at, and folks will go, oh, that's baloney, but it's true, a 7-day forecast being 83% accurate. So we have jumped immensely because, and here's why, we all have all of the information on at our fingertips as you do right now.
Right now.
In the old days, and I'm old enough to speak to the old days, and in fact, if I brought Randy on camera, we'd really see old. But that's something else entirely. No, go back to, take that shot. Okay, take that shot, go ahead. Take that shot. The reason why it's important, there's Randy with the thumbs up. Yeah, that's right. Because the reality is both Randy and I, old as dirt, we remember the days that in the background there would be this running, it would be almost the length of this table, and there'd be a big white roll of paper. And it would just sit there and go, and I would get maybe 4 or 5 maps a day when I first started in this business, and that would be it.
Wow.
And I'd have to forecast from that, and that would be about it. Look at the satellite data and then determine what the forecast is. We have gone such leaps and bounds in such a short amount of time in 30 years that I've been doing it. I don't know how anybody could have possibly forecasted, and on Veterans Day, it's a good day to bring that up.
Sure.
Folks who forecasted for D-Day or forecasted any time during World War II or any time along those lines, because they didn't have any of that information except weather balloons and satellite data that they were told about or the radio sondes that are dropped out of planes. It's amazing how meteorology has grown in such a short amount of time. So from a model standpoint, to answer specifically, because you did that, that's what
she was asking.
Yes.
She's
well,
wondering
I have a tendency,
how reliable
hey, we got nothing but time here, so we're okay.
It was a good question.
Yeah, okay.
It really was a good question.
So there's all of the prelude. The answer to the question is this. Reasonable model data can go out about 10 days to 14 days. And I feel comfortable, and that's why we were talking about that.
Sure.
Now, there are longer term forecasts, as we showed here at the top of the show, the 90-day. But the validity of those forecasts, the accuracy drops immensely.
Sure.
So while it's kind of cool to see what could happen, you know, we're talking about a percentage that's a little bit more than 50-50. We're at about, I think it's 58%. Whereas obviously a 7-day forecast is 83, 10 is somewhere in the 70% range, so we're still on the plus side of being right.
Okay, well, speaking of the 10-day forecast, a couple of people have actually asked us that, and Matt most recently tweeted this to us. It looks like there's a possibility for a big snow about 10 days out, according to some models. He didn't indicate which models he was looking at. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it is there, and I did see it. What happens every day for the folks at home for a little inside baseball, inside weather, there's a number of models. Let me grab a pen here. And let me see off the top of my head. There's what we call the EC. There is also the GFS. There's also the NAM. These are obviously longer form names, but this is just to short it for you. There's the RUC. Those are the 4 that are most commonly used. These 3 and this one is a more short term. Like if I'm looking at forecasting snow for the next 24 hours, we'll look more at this. And so what happens is, and this is the really interesting thing, they're all driven on billions, trillions of data a second, right? There's a supercomputers kind of crunching that stuff out. When the forecast comes out, I often use this terminology. The forecast is wrong coming out of the supercomputers. Because because the atmosphere's already changed, or something's happened over here that has changed what's happening over here now. So what happens is, as meteorologists, we often talk about analyzing the data or seeing computer forecasts. That's our job, to match up what's really happening in the atmosphere with these computer models that obviously are a lot smarter than us, seeing patterns, seeing formations, and so we marry that together. So to answer specifically in his question, I wouldn't give validity yet to that snow until I get a little bit closer, because of that reasoning. I want to see that come in a little bit tighter in maybe a couple of model runs and a couple of models, and then you start putting credibility in it.
Sure. Okay. And here's kind of a fun question from Dean.
Yeah.
You know, it's the beginning of November, not even technically winter yet. Why is it getting so cold?
Okay, a great question, and it is unusual, and it was because of that unusual weather pattern that's set up that we talked about at the top. If you're just joining us, I'll make a little quick answer for you, Dean, because the folks who were in here probably saw that, but we had a weather system come in up over what was really the Bering Sea in Alaska, and then it kicked off and kind of nudged the cold air back into the country. And so as a result, it was one of those anomalies, one of those unusual things to happen, and consequently we get one of those unusual things to happen. Anything else?
From Sue DePoy Connor, do you think this is a precursor to the winter that we can expect to have this year?
That's always an interesting observation. Probably not, based on our long-term projections. The reality of the situation is the most important factor maybe to what's going to be happening in our winter will be El Nino. That is a phenomenon in the tropical South Pacific, and what that does is the water's out there warm, and then consequently it has a tendency to change the global weather pattern. And that is right now wavering on the fence of whether or not it's going to be a mild El Nino year or not at all. And in fact, the Climate Prediction Center has come back to about 55% that it will be mild El Nino. If that happens, that's why they're putting out that warmer contrast for us, drier contrast for us over the top of us, and wetter across the southern tier of states. Okay, final few questions. Only got a few minutes left.
I think we only have one more. This is from Steve Lilly. And we talked about earlier the phrasing of polar vortex. This is an Arctic blast. He's asking, why don't we just call it winter? Yeah, you're right. You're right. You know what it is? A bunch of scientists and meteorologists like myself, we have to have something to do. Plus, we have to pay the mortgage. That's right.
You know, I've got a wife, 4 kids, 3 dogs, and a big mortgage. And so we need people to watch. No, in all seriousness, the reality is, you're right. It is winter, and it's one of those things that happen. And I think we said it at the outset. Look, you know, if everybody prepares for this, things are going to be fine. I go back to Eric here just for a second, only from the standpoint that, is there anything else we've left out or anything else that we should mention for the folks at home? Because if you prepare for this, we're going to be fine, obviously, but we don't want to see people's pipes burst or anything along those lines. Sure. Is there anything that maybe I didn't touch on that you would that you thought about?
Well, I think that you know, it's great that folks maybe not have turned on their heating system at this point in time.
Right.
Trying to conserve on those energy bills.
Sure.
And so it's my advice to get that guy fired up, make sure that it's functioning, because right now all the HVAC guys are busy. So you know, you want to make sure that furnace is going to kick on and keep you warm.
It's a good point. I haven't put mine on. Yeah, you know, so and I haven't kicked it on. You're right, because we'll need it here certainly, and it looks like it's going to be an extended period over the next few days. Okay, Eric Donahue from People Working Cooperatively, Libby Cunningham from our social media section of WCPO, and I want to thank them both. And I wanted to finish up here with maybe a little forecast. If you're just joining us, I got about a minute and a half. Is that about right, guys? Tell me if that's about right. Okay. Yeah. So what I thought I'd do is probably give you a little weather update. Since you're watching right now, I imagine that might be something you'd like to see. So let's do that and bring this over to here and show you our 9 first warning Doppler as it stands right now. And you'll see that we've got waves of rain that are moving across the area right at present. The rain is going to continue now probably through about 9 o'clock in our forecast. I'm going to set something else up here while we're still talking, and I want to show you the wider view of this. I'll get down and tighten it up a little bit. You'll see for yourself as I put this online in a second that we're not going to be going very long for the rain. Look at this. Let me lapse it for you so you can see it a little bit. And as we lapse it, you can see how the rain's coming across the area. Look at the line. It's right there. It's actually on the edge of our viewing area, so it's going to be gone probably another hour, hour and a half. And then the reality is the colder air. Let me see if I can kick on the temperatures real quick here. I'm just curious myself, quite honestly. This past half hour we've been watching. Oh, there's a good indication of what's happening. That cold air has already reached Indianapolis. It's 35. It's 45 here. So that cold air, it's 62 in Columbus, 60 right at the moment. So that cold air is invading in, and it's going to be here for a while. Bottom line to the forecast is it's going to be cold tomorrow and some sunshine. I think what will happen is we'll end up with the possibility of flurries on Thursday. And then what I'm really watching is perhaps Sunday, where we could see some accumulating snow. Well, that was a quick 30 minutes. And again, Libby Cunningham, thank you very much.
Thank you
Couldn't
very
have done it
much.
without you. And Eric, that was very kind of you to come
My
in.
pleasure.
So thank you.
For the
All right, well, there you have it. A little information for you on the weather. Thanks for joining us here.